Okay, and we're live. So the discussion that we want to have this week, with the international break that's happened, obviously, it would be fun to have a bit of a discussion around England and where we think England are, where we think England are going, and basically what our general views on the England setup. So whenever you talk about England, there's always one debate that always seems to like kind of rattle around in everyone's head is Gareth Southgate the right man for the job? So, without any further ado, Benj, what's your opinion?
I think there's two ways to look at this. So a lot of people will say, should Southgate have or be sacked as England manager based off the recent performances? I think the answer to that's no. I don't think the FA should sack him because I think he's done well enough to have the backing from the FA to keep him there. However, I do think that after the World Cup performance, which some people might say we've done. I don't think we've done amazing, to be honest with you. But I think after the World Cup performance, I feel there was grounds for Southgate to walk there, and the kind of whole should I or shouldn't I let me take some time away. My family was probably a good thing for him, but I don't think he's, in my opinion, I think he probably should have gone. But maybe he's due one more tournament. Maybe Euro 2024 is his last one.
Okay, so I'll say my opinion. I don't think among our circles it's been up for debate. My opinion that I don't think Southgate has been the right man for the job. I liked the idea of Southgate when we first got him. Obviously, he'd worked with the youth team, he knew the players, and he was going to be the man that kind of moved away from sort of the old England guard, like the old England players, and usher in this new era of talented young footballers that were going to take over the England team. And I think he's been mildly successful. I think his downfall has been himself, in my honest opinion. And it came after the first World Cup that he was in charge of, where I think he had some tactical naivety. The first time, like the cracks started to appear for me, we played Colombia, and I remember it well because we was in Barcelona watching the game
Yeah.
in a bar where one side of the bar was England fans and one side of the bar was Colombians, and we were watching the game. And it was a game where we were winning. We looked comfortable. We should have won that game comfortably. But then I can't remember if it was like a goal up. He decided to go defensive, and then lo and behold, Colombia get back in it and force the game into penalties. And it's
Yeah.
like you look at the top managers, like you look at, for example, recent performances of teams like Liverpool against Man United, Man City sometimes when they play, Arsenal when they go a goal up, they don't stop. They push on, they keep going. They get two, they get three, they basically kill the game off. And I don't think Southgate's tactics are ever to kill the game off. He always like gets a goal up and then thinks right now defend it. And we've had the same issues in other times as well. Like was it? I think it might have been the same World Cup. Actually, we played Croatia in the semi-finals, I do believe.
Yeah. When we lost.
Yep, and again we went a goal up. I think it was it a Trippier free kick that we scored.
Yeah. When we
Um,
all believed that was the time we believed that was.
it was we went a goal up, Trippier, and then suddenly it's okay, sit back and defend it. And of course, we ended up losing that game. And it's
Yeah.
it's kind of been a running theme for Southgate that I think throughout his time there is that he makes decisions that you don't necessarily agree with. Against Italy, we were winning that game. We then allowed them back into it, and it's like, you're in a final. I get it. You don't want to like you want to try and give yourself the best opportunity of winning, and then I can't understand why, if that's the case, you bring Rashford on for penalties.
Yeah.
Like you bring Rashford on, like at the end of the game, they've got Chiellini, they've got Bonucci. They're not fast. They've been playing the full 90 minutes. Stick Rashford up top and let Rashford run at them. Saka was causing them problems all game. Or since he came on, like there was an opportunity there for England to bring on Rashford, bring on I don't know Jadon Sancho, bring on like these fast players who could get at their back four and really put them under pressure. but instead he almost kind of went, okay, we'll just take it to penalties, which, as an England fan or as an English person, like you know that England and penalties don't go well together.
Yeah, yeah. Historically, they don't do that.
Yeah,
But the thing with defending though is that it's not like the olden days where you can just put bodies behind the ball and teams automatically default to just pumping the ball into the. But it's not really like that anymore. And I think you've got to be clever, and you've almost got to play in an offensive type of manner to defend well. And I just don't think Southgate's fully got that, because when he attacks, I actually don't think there's a problem. I think we score a lot of goals under Southgate, but it's almost like when we come up against a more tricky opponent or a team perceived to be the same or better than us, that he has to just try and keep it all sturdy at the back and safe and protected and stuff. And it's just not. We're better on the front foot. You take France in the World Cup, the one just gone, losing 2-1. But I think if we don't sit back, especially for large parts, I think we can go on and win that. And we get the equaliser, and then also we go a bit more neutral, and it's just wrong football tactics from him a lot of
yeah.
times.
I'd love to see him just go for it. I'd love just to see Southgate at some point to say, you know what, let's just let's just play attacking football from the start. I think like when you look at our defence, okay, there's question marks over people like Maguire, but no matter what Maguire's Man United form has been like, his England form has always been good.
Yeah,
John Stones is a good defender. Carl Walker's a good defender. Then whoever they decide to play at left back, Luke Shaw would be the number one, or you've got Chilwell. England have got a good back four where they can rely on, like they can take pressure. I feel like with the players that England has got, he kind of plays a bit more negative, where he'll play, for example, Calvin Phillips and Declan Rice in midfield, where both of those two players, like their jobs are to break up the play. Like Rice is good at going forward, but he's more there to break up the player than try and get the ball like to the attacking players. And you've got Calvin Phillips who does the same job. It'll be good, to play one of them and maybe stick on another attacking player and another attacking midfielder maybe, and really take the game to teams. But I feel like Southgate's quite stuck in his way, where it's like, this is how I want to play, so this is how I'm gonna play.
And I don't think, on all accounts, I don't think that's a bad philosophy to have, because you'll find a lot of managers that do have their own unique way of playing football. Like you can say, obviously Guardiola he's got a certain style. Jurgen Klopp has got his own certain style, and maybe teams are figuring that out now. But I think with the choice of players that he has as well, I mean, defensively there's probably not much room, but I find him very stuck with the players that he picks, and maybe that could be an issue. Like, I mean, why is Calvin Phillips? I like Calvin Phillips, but why is he in the England team? Like, he's played like 5 or 6 games for Man City.
Well, I think like we can leave the Calvin Phillips because that's a point for a later question I'm going to bring up. But yeah, no, I agree. But like when you say Jurgen Klopp, for example, one thing that always sticks in my head is that Liverpool had Real Madrid in the Champions League final. We lost that game 3-1, and obviously, there was 2 goalkeeper mistakes. So what does Klopp do? He goes out, he buys a new goalkeeper, he shakes things up, he reinvents the team. And it's like when England go into a final against Italy, you expect then, okay, I've learned, like as a manager, you'd expect him to go, okay, I've learnt my lesson now. I know where the mistakes were. I know how to fix them. And then he'd change them. But when you're looking at like multiple tournaments now where you're going, oh, he went a goal up against Colombia, he then sat back, the game went to penalties. He went a goal up against Croatia, we sat back, we lost the game. We go a goal up against Italy, we sit back, we lose on penalties. And against France, it wasn't that France team, in my opinion, was there for the taking.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we never looked like, don't get me wrong, in the first half against France, we looked like we could go out there and win that game. But it was like as the game kind of went on, we were dropping deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's not just the France game. Look at how we played against America. We were under the cosh in that game, and we were lucky to come away from that game with a draw. It just looked like they were more up for it than us. And it leads on to other issues that I have as well in terms of like tactics. There's a lot of time where I see Harry Kane drop into the halfway line to pick up the ball, and then suddenly you realise that you've got two fast wingers either side, and Kane hasn't got the pace to keep up with them when they're looking to get the ball in the box.
Yeah.
England look a lot more dangerous when Kane's in the middle, mixing it up with the centre backs, and then you've got your two wide players looking to get the ball into him. Whereas there's a lot of times when England are playing where Kane will drop really deep, and it kind of ruins our chances in that attack because then Kane's not up to speed with the rest of the play, and it's just something that's been there from the start. So
Yeah. I mean, if you look at stats, so I mean, Southgate's win percentage rate for England 70.3%. Which when you look over it, it's a good record, right? But
but
I
who have
think
you
the games
played?
that I mean, that is a decent question, but at an international level,
Yeah,
you're only going to get a handful of
but if
big teams, aren't you?
yeah, but it's easy to say, okay, we'll go out and beat teams like Moldova, Luxembourg, and teams like that. But if our win percentage against the bigger nations is a lot
Well,
less than
that's
that,
it, yeah.
then you're never going to win a World Cup unless you can beat a big team. And
And that's the one thing. Is it like last 9 in 14 of the so-called big countries or something along them lines anyway? And it just goes to show that tactically against a bigger team, whether he's worried, whether he just doesn't feel confident attacking, but it just shows that something's not right. And just going back to the Jurgen Klopp statement you mentioned about goalkeeper messed up, he bought a new goalkeeper. Well, what did Southgate learn from losing against Italy in the Euros all the way to playing France in the semis in the World Cup?
that England, well, you should have learned that England are a much better team when we're attacking.
Should have,
But
in my opinion.
I don't feel like he did. I feel like against America, it was one example where we against America we didn't look like a team that was ever going to like really attack from the off. We showed glimpses of it. Don't get me wrong against teams like Wales, but it's like if you haven't got an England team that's up for a game against the likes of Wales or Scotland, then it's not exactly a good England team. But
Wow.
for me, it's like against France. That France team was there for the taking on that particular day. I thought if we'd have gone for them, we'd have won that game. But I just felt the longer and longer the game goes on and England aren't ahead, the less and less likely we become to win that game.
Yeah, if Kane obviously would have scored that second penalty, and I don't particularly blame Kane because 9 times out of 10 he bags them, so it's just one of them unfortunate things. But if he scores that penalty and it's 2-2, I think it's probably on our side then because I think France were worried.
Yeah,
It's only because we allowed them to have the ball and allowed them to push forward at the best of times that it's a simple ball in, and Giroud's always going to win headers.
yeah. I mean, the thing that worries me is that if we'd have pulled it back to 2-2, we'd have tried to take the game to extra time and penalties.
Well, yeah, I mean,
you
potentially, yeah.
you can't.
Potentially.
But so yeah, like in my opinion, like the first, I would have probably looked to get rid of him after the Euros. I don't think I'd give him this World Cup.
I think he had a claim to stay for the World Cup because we got to the final. We looked really good the whole tournament. And the young guns are through it. And maybe a couple, another year of maturing and playing for club level. Like players like Saka, Foden would, Bellingham would kind of have another year of experience in the World Cup.
I mean, it okay. I mean, it's a good point, but then you look at what happened to England in the World Cup. I think we got to pretty much where the minimum of where you'd expect England to get is pretty much where England got. Was it the quarterfinals we lost against France?
Mm.
And it's like you think about it. If we'd have attacked France from the off, we'd have had Croatia. Which don't get me wrong, like Croatia are a good team. Like I think they're underrated a lot. People don't always like when you picture the team that's going to get to like the World Cup semis, quarterfinals. Croatia's not always mentioned, but they've proved now for the last few tournaments that they can get there. But if England beat France and then we play Croatia and then we play Argentina, I would have fancied us to win that World Cup. But I think that naivety crept in, and I think it's been kind of a recurring theme for him. I suppose the other question that you'd ask is, if Southgate was to go, who would you replace him with now that
That
Hodgson's gone back
was
to Palace?
That was my question, Roy Hodgson. Bloody hell. Well, that would be my question. So if you would have got rid of him at that Euros, knowing the World Cup was literally the following year, what who realistically would have came in?
I mean, I could throw one name straight off the bat, Eddie Howe.
Yeah, but
He wasn't
I'll
at
take Eddie.
Newcastle at that point, was he?
I don't know. To be honest with you, was he?
I don't think so. I think he would have been a free agent, so it would have been easy to. Well, maybe not easy. Depends on what Howe's plans were, obviously. But I think with what Eddie Howe has proved with Newcastle is that he can motivate a team. Like, okay, I know Newcastle have spent money; they've improved in certain areas, but you look at how the Newcastle team were performing before Howe took over, and afterwards, it's almost like he gave all of them a new lease of life. And I think him going into that England setup, he would have took them to that next level.
Well, yeah. Eddie Howe joined Newcastle 2021.
And when was the Euro final? It was 2020, wasn't it?
The Euros 2020. Yeah.
So we could
Was
have
it
got
2020?
yeah. Then you had the World Cup last year.
Yeah.
Well, winter this year.
So there was a very minute window and gap to get. I mean, Eddie Howe is my natural choice, and I think personally, with Newcastle, like he's done a very good job at Newcastle, but at some point they're going to want to take that next step and increase the brand, increase everything else. And I think Eddie Howe will probably become available, and that's why I think let Southgate do the Euros, because I don't think there's anyone else at the moment that can probably come in and do the job. And then after that Euros,
What about Gerrard?
what's in my opinion, I don't. He's done all right at Rangers. Won a season unbeaten, took the throne off Celtic. Won the Scottish Cup, but proved nothing with Villa. Which I thought he'd done a great job personally, being a Blues fan. But he's done nothing against Villa. But I don't. I mean, if you put Rangers or Celtic in the Premier League, they're not gonna. I don't think he would have finished in the top half of Rangers.
No, I agree. But I think his attitude. I think the fact he's a former international. I know Southgate's a former international. But the fact that Gerrard's been in and around the England setup for a long time, the way he's worked himself up, I think with it's like I think a lot of the issue that people have with the likes of with Gerrard is that he brought a lot of players into the Villa team that perhaps don't belong in the Villa team. I mean, I'm not 100% sure if you're a Villa fan and you're watching this. Put a comment and let us know how you feel about Gerrard's performance as manager. But I think when you're the England manager, you've got like obviously a limited pool of players that you can pick from. Could he would he play attacking football like the style of football that he would play? I think he wouldn't be. I don't think he would be a terrible shout. If you were looking to replace Southgate right now, I think.
I think that there's two things that, in my opinion, would back him up, and that's the fact that the players would play for him out of respect.
Yeah.
And second of all, I do think that he would go and play attacking, because I think his passion might take over a little bit, which, let's face it, 90% of England fans, that's what we want. We want the team to go out and would, rather lose 5-4 battling than lose 2-1 and sitting back for half the game, So, but he's just in that pool of potentials that you could classify him as, because he's English. And for me, Eddie Howe's the one. I genuinely think Eddie Howe could win a tournament for us.
I think Howe could. I think we had the opportunity to get Howe. I think he would have took the job. Like, he never had a job following on from Bournemouth. I think that if England came in and said, look, do you want to come in and take over? I think he would have done it. And I think I agree with you. I can't see him being Newcastle manager forever, but he's doing a good job for them at the moment. So I can see them kind of going, well, he's had this season. Whether they make top 4 or whether they finish in the top 6, like, depending on how they do. I think if you're the owners of Newcastle, you think, well, he's earned another season.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're the owners of Newcastle, you'd probably give him another 2 years maybe, because they've got to get in the Champions League and sustain it in there, which You can't. It's just, if you keep swapping managers, it ain't going to happen, is it? But I think with Southgate though, if you flip it around and say, okay, Eddie Howe could come into England and do a job, could Southgate go to Newcastle and finish in the top six?
I don't think so.
Could he go to uh, Chelsea and put them in the top four?
So, not at the moment. I think what you've got to look at is you look at the teams at the top of the Premier League. They all play to their own identity. Liverpool obviously have got the Gegenpress heavy metal football that they not this season, but typically they've become known for. Man City have got their sort of style where they're very possession focused, but they also press teams in like really high up the pitch.
Suffocate them, yeah.
Yeah. Even I think Man United are starting to find their identity now. That when Ten Hag first took over, he against the big teams anyway, he played a lot of counter attacking football. But I think we're starting to see how Ten Hag wants Man U to play right now, and that's starting to come true. I think you look at each team; they have an identity which works with the way that they play. I think if you take Southgate, put him into one of them, he would probably do what Potter's doing at Chelsea. I think he'd struggle to sort of put. Well, personally, I don't know what his identity is. He seems like a very old fashioned type manager, where he'd go in there and he'd be like, right lads, we're winning 1-0, shut up shop now. Let's hold this and get the 3 points. Which, I know back in the day Chelsea won the league by playing that kind of football. Arsenal have been called boring Arsenal in the past for playing that kind of football, but I don't think that style works nowadays.
I mean, it doesn't. I think you are right. I think the football's moved on dramatically from the days of that. And that's why I think managers like David Moyes just aren't going to, West Ham's probably the highest he'll get now. And you could probably say it was a good season from last season getting to the Europa Conference. Probably a fair argument, but I don't think you're ever going to see a manager like David Moyes win the Premier League.
I think it's the difference between a top Premier League team and a bottom Premier League team is that you have some managers that are very good at surviving, like knowing what it takes to avoid relegation, and then you have some managers who will come in, they'll completely change a club over from top to bottom, reinvent them, put their own stamp onto that club, make them play a certain way, and then suddenly they're battling for, top half of the table, top six, top four, and for the title. And you look at the teams at the top, they all seem to have that manager with that identity, and I think Tottenham are struggling because they've had a lot of managers with a lot of identities, and they don't really have the time to implement those identities. But the teams that have kind of been stick like you look at Arsenal, for example, it was last year that people were saying Arteta should get the sack.
Yeah.
He's been given time to perfect his identity, bring the players that fit his philosophy, and now it looks like they're probably going to win the league. Liverpool, they've you can argue, well, Klopp's earned his like Liverpool are going through a bad patch now, and a lot of you see the press saying that Klopp could leave and everything else, and a lot of people say yeah, but Klopp's got enough credit in the bank to be able to stay at Liverpool, but Liverpool wasn't always winning leagues when he first took over. They lost Champions League finals. They finished, I think it was fourth in his first season. Liverpool, they still stuck with him knowing there was a long term plan. And I think, that's kind of what you got to have in mind in the Premier League. But we'll move it back to the England debate. And rather fittingly talking about Liverpool and Klopp, the next question I have is, does Trent Alexander-Arnold belong in the England team?
I think right now you could argue a case that no, he shouldn't be in the England team. And
when you say England team, are you meaning the England squad or just the starting 11?
Oh yeah, starting 11. I mean, take him to tournaments, of course, because he's an asset. But in the starting 11, no, I think there is a bigger case or a bigger argument for either Kieran Trippier or Kyle Walker to be the main right back.
Yeah,
I think Kieran Trippier is far more. He's got his head leveled, I think, whereas Trent's a bit more sporadic in how he plays. Like 1 minute is, and he's learned from it, obviously from the way that Klopp plays. But 1 minute is so hot at the field that he can't get back, and then when he does get back, if you put him up against a class winger in the world, Trent's not a good defender either. Whereas I think Trippier and Walker have more about them.
Okay. I mean, I agree with that. I think I was kind of like the question was kind of designed looking at the fact that Southgate didn't select Trent at all, which I think was a mistake. I think that you would take Trent. Looking at
It
his,
depends also what you want to do, though. Sorry to interrupt, but if you're going to take him specifically as a right back, then I guess there probably is an argument not to take him because you've also got Reece James, which you could probably argue is better than Trent
I
as
think
well.
I think that Trent deserves a place for his crossing ability, his free kick ability, like the fact he can set up goals. I think that if you're struggling to break a team down, Trent's a good player to bring on to be able to unlock that door. Um, I don't think I think Trent's not the best defender in the world. I think that's quite an obvious thing to say. But I think that he has a merit being in the England squad. Like there is a place for him there, and I think he might be. I kind of agree with what you're saying. I think he might be like hindered by the fact that England seem to be blessed with a lot of good right backs at the moment. Um, but I think
Is Trent's right foot better than Kieran Trippier's right foot?
I would say so.
So I think there's an argument there that it might not be.
I mean, I can see what you're saying. I think free kick wise, Trippier is I don't know actually. Trent's really good at free kicks. Um,
Because Trippier also has, we're sitting here and we're saying, look, we go a goal up and then all of a sudden we sit back. If we're sitting back and you've got Vinicius Junior attacking you, or whoever it might be, Neymar, whatever, and he's down Trent's side, then the worry starts coming in. Whereas if it's down Trippier or Walker's side, you feel a bit more calmer.
yeah, I agree with what you're saying there. But I think if you're losing 1-0 or you're drawing a game, and it's getting to like the 70th minute, and you need an option to be able to set up a goal. Like looking at England's players in general, I think that Trent. There's a good argument that Trent could come on and set something up, especially if you've got Harry Kane in the box.
Yeah, but so could James Maddison.
Yeah, but you have more options, don't you? You know, Liverpool don't just rely on Trent to set up the goals. They rely on Salah, Robertson, Henderson, Firmino when he plays, Darwin, Gakpo. Like, there's a lot of players that can create chances, which is why, obviously, take this season out of it. You look at seasons gone by. Robertson and Trent were like leading the assist tables and things like that because they're very good at getting forward.
So if we're losing 1-0 and we've got 20 minutes to go, and you've got Sancho on the bench, you've got Madison on the bench, you've got Rashford on the bench, you've got I don't know, Sterling on the bench, you'd bring on Trent to replace Trippier.
I think that if you've got those players on the bench, like obviously, is international 5 subs as well?
Yes.
Yeah, so you've got plenty of options for players that you can bring on in that scenario. And I think if you've got Harry Kane in the box, you're losing 1-0. You're putting the team under pressure. You want someone who can whip the ball in. As good as some of those players are, like I would pick Trent's ability to cross the ball to Kane above Sancho's ability to cross the ball to Kane in that moment.
But I don't think bringing Trent on with 20 minutes to go is going to be massive different to Kieran Trippier staying on.
Well, I mean, he's been playing for 70 minutes and England still aren't winning the game. So
you could argue that it's just changing the dynamic, I guess. But I don't know. Maybe it's just the wrong time. Maybe it needs Cole Walker to retire just to push Trent up that extra place. But
I think if you're going to take Trent, you're not going to take Trent for a defender.
But then you're not going to put him right wing, are you?
No, but you could have him as an attacking fullback, like a wing back type thing, where I'd imagine England would be playing more, with Declan Rice sort of sitting in the middle, breaking up the play, almost making a back three to allow to allow your fullbacks to push on and join the attack, similar to what Liverpool do with Fabinho. Well, actually, a lot of teams do it as well. When you look at Man City, they have Rodri doing that kind of position. You look at Man United, for example, they've got the likes of Casemiro or McTominay who will do that, where they'll just sit in front of the defenders and make a back three so the wing backs can push forward. I'd imagine that kind of style would suit Trent a lot more than it would suit the other players that we talked about. Like I'm not saying I don't think Trent should start for England. I think when you've got Kyle Walker, like he's got to start for England. He's the best right back that we've got.
I think Trippier for me.
Really,
Yeah.
I think I'd still go for Kyle Walker. I think Trippier is obviously a good backup to have for Kyle Walker, and then you've got the likes of Reece James and Trent to fight for it. But I think when you're picking Calvin Phillips, who I think has only had 56 minutes worth of football this season for Man City, to not take Trent, who's played
Yeah,
pretty much every
yeah.
game, is a bit. It's another reason why I don't think Southgate is the right man for the job.
Yeah. And this rolls back to what I said earlier about Southgate stuck in his own way with the players. It's almost like he doesn't want to be adventurous. Like I'm not a huge fan of him, but everyone knew that Grealish should have been in the team
Yeah,
in the years. Yeah, he was so reluctant to even pick him, let alone bring him on.
yeah, I agree. And also, I feel like Foden probably has deserved more time in the England team than what he's had. I think that he is very much, as you say, I think he's very stubborn in the way that he's got in his head he has a starting 11, and as long as they're fully fit, that starting 11 will play.
Yeah, but you could say it about So, I mean, Jordan Pickford's obviously the man that's in the net, but why isn't Nick Pope? I
Well,
quite like Pickford, but I do think Pickford's.
I wouldn't pick Pickford. I agree with what you're saying about Pope, but for me, I'd pick Ramsdale for the England keeper.
Yeah, and then we've got other players like for me, I can't understand why Harvey Barnes for Leicester isn't in the England setup because he causes problems week in week out in the Premier League. And yeah, he's not the best player in the world, but put him up against a basic fullback at international level, he's going to kill teams.
Well, you look at England historically, the one position we've always had problems with is left wing. And then you've got Harvey Barnes, who plays left wing for Leicester, and he actually plays it very well, I think.
Does it
Um,
extremely well? Yeah.
so yeah, there's an argument for Harvey Barnes to be in there. I think when you look at the amount of criticism, I'm kind of going back to something that I said earlier on about Maguire. Always seems to play well for England, but if you're picking players based on performance, then surely a player not playing for their club team is a big indicator that you know they should their position in the England squad should be questioned. And if Maguire has been at fault for so many mistakes that he was making pre Ten Hag coming in, to the point where Ten Hag has now brought in a new centre back and just completely dropped him. Does he warrant his place in the England team? And the same can be said with Calvin Phillips. I thought at Leeds, don't get me wrong, like I think that Calvin Phillips is a good player. I do really like him. But when you've only played like 56 minutes worth of football this season, does he deserve a
Yeah,
place in the England team? And then
not starting.
yeah, so there's a lot of questions about it. And I think what he does is singles out certain players. I don't think he likes Trent for whatever reason. I think he has an issue with Trent.
Probably the
Um,
same issue as he's got with Grealish.
yeah, Grealish. I agree with what you were saying. During, there's been times where games have been calling out for Grealish to come on there because of, he does win free kicks in dangerous areas. He is quite creative. He does drive the ball into the box. And there's been games where you're calling out for that kind of player. Even Phil Foden sometimes has been sitting on the bench for the whole game. Marcus Rashford. Was it the Euros where it took Harry Kane like, ages to finally score a goal?
Yeah, he didn't score in the groups today.
Yeah, and then you've got Marcus Rashford, who
But I don't think you can drop Kane. Yeah, I think that here's the
I don't,
obvious choice because there's no one that naturally can replace him.
I don't think you drop him, but I think when you realise that the player's having a bad game, you sub him.
Yeah,
And I think,
yeah.
there's a lot of times where Kane wasn't having a good game, but he refused to take him off.
The only counter argument that I would have is that you do want to find that level of continuity, right? So you take club teams, once they've found that starting 11 that's working, they tend to carry on playing bar injuries and suspensions. And that's probably what he's doing with England. But I just think that for example, Calvin Phillips, I don't think for 90% of the games, I don't think we need a Calvin Phillips and a Declan Rice on the same pitch.
Yeah,
We could, replace him for, another central midfielder who doesn't have to be overly attacking if you don't want to, because obviously you got Bellingham who can do the box to box kind of role, but then you could have someone like I don't know, like a Mason Mount, or you could put like Phil Foden more centrally, James Ward-Prowse.
Madison.
My opinion, yeah, James Madison. You could have that kind of extra utility player that can kind of just sit there, let Bellingham have the legs, and they just kind of use it as that second bit of a push or whatever. But he's just, he wants to play that 4-2-3-1, and it's, I don't know. For me, it's just not. I don't think we will win a tournament with Southgate.
No, and I think in some ways it annoys me in the sense that have we had our best chance to win a tournament? I think the Euros
Under Southgate or in general?
in general, I think the World Cup just gone was a very good chance for England, and the Euros before that was a very good chance for England. Like those were two tournaments that we were involved in where you kind of look at it and you think these are two really good chances for England to actually win something now. And both times I think we were let down by, I don't want to say like managerial decisions, but I feel like naivety crept in. I think what's the best thing to say, like the reason why we've lost certain games is because Southgate was outclassed by another manager. Like Mancini, for example, knew how to play that game. France, they knew how to play that game as well. And then
I don't overly agree with that in terms of the France game, because I think we had France exactly where we wanted them.
So
I think he was semi-reluctant, Southgate. When we went back to 1-1, I think he was reluctant to go full steam ahead in pursuit of that second goal.
Yeah, so that's what I mean though. It's like managerial naivety where
from Southgate, not from Deschamps, because I think France. I don't think they could cope with us when we attacked.
Yeah, but what I mean is though, like Deschamps knew that they weren't playing very well, and he knew how to exploit England in certain situations. Like obviously, Giroud coming on, or I can't remember if Giroud started, but having that player that he knew that if you give him a chance in the box and like he's gonna score goals. Grealish being that sort of playmaker in the middle. I think even though France were playing bad, he knew Griezmann, sorry, not Grealish. But yeah, like having like he knew that the way I saw it is he kind of knew that the game wasn't going to be won by a stunning Mbappe goal. He knew it was going to be a scrappy goal that was going to win it, and then having a player like Giroud in the box, who is a poacher in many respects, and if the ball falls down to him with half a chance, you kind of want it to fall to Giroud.
But if we'd have been pushed up, 10 yards, yeah, you slightly more at risk for Mbappe. But I think we controlled. Kyle Walker done a job on Mbappe all game. I think it was one time he got around him and that was it.
Yeah, and
but we went to this low block, and yes, it was a corner which was cleared, then a quick throw, blah 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 blah. But the thing is that if you're gonna sit back like that and you've got players like Giroud in the box, it only takes one or two crosses before he gets his head to it.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that
push out, get 10, 15 yards up the pitch.
But then, those are the kind of mistakes that I was referencing earlier on, that where like you lose against Italy in the final on penalties, where you think to yourself, okay, why didn't you bring Rashford on half an hour earlier at the start of extra time? Why didn't you take the game to Italy? Italy wasn't playing particularly well. Like they were there for the beating. We went a goal up, and then it was just this kind of naivety that kind of let Italy back into it, and then the decision to bring on Rashford just to take a penalty, I think was.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, it was a shocking decision. But then, as you said though, like, going back to the Klopp point of Klopp realised that, he wasn't going to win anything with Carrier, so therefore went out and bought a new goalkeeper and replaced that kind of weakness. And you said, well, what does Southgate learn? Well, then you look at the France game, he's learned nothing because it was the same sort of style. We didn't push up forward. We didn't take the game to them. We didn't really attack them. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we played badly, but we could have won that game if we'd have been.
Large spells in that first half, we were brilliant,
Yeah,
and that's why France were worried.
yeah. And if we'd have just pushed up on that 5 yards higher than what we were, then
The second that we got that equaliser,
we should have took the game to them and really pushed them, and made them panic.
It's the same when we scored against Italy inside 2 minutes or 5 minutes, whatever. If we carry on there, I guarantee we're turning up inside 20, 25 minutes and we're coasting that game.
Yeah, get into half time at 2-0, and then if at that point, if you're thinking, okay, we're 2-0, there's 45 minutes left, then sit back, don't rest on a 1-0 win.
Yeah, but then if you look at the friendly the other night against Italy, we've done exactly that. 2-0 up first half, acing it, probably could have been 3 or 4. Second half, we come out the mentality, right, guys, let's defend this 2-0. It goes to 2-1, a man sent off, and we could have, easily drew that game.
Yeah, so I think that the naivety is there, and I think the naivety is sticking there, and I think unless he wins the Euros, I just don't think Southgate should have a part.
That's what I mean. Yeah, I think the Euros for me is this next one's got to be his last tournament.
I think he goes either way. I think if he wins the Euros, Southgate quits. I think he quits as a manager who's won an international tournament for England. He goes out, he bows out with his head held high. Sign off when you're winning rather than risk becoming the villain in the next tournament. And then I think if he doesn't win the next tournament, the Euros, then England should look elsewhere for another option.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because I feel like if he wins it, apart from obviously 66, the first manager to go and do something, a young squad as well, so a lot of potential to kick on. But I mean, for me, I just hope that it falls that, of course we hope that we win the Euros, but it falls into a situation where Eddie Howe's then free and then we can just take Eddie Howe because he ain't scared of anyone. He'll go and attack, he'll play his football.
Yeah, I actually really like the way that Eddie Howe plays football. As you say, they're not scared of anyone. They take the game to everyone that they play. And I think playing that style of football with England and the talent that we've got, we will disrupt a lot of teams, and we will, will force them. I think what Howe does, like the way that he plays with Newcastle, like he forces teams back, he forces them into their own box, he forces them to make mistakes. And I think when you've got an England, some of the players that England have got, you're penning teams back. It's just a matter of time before that England team finds a breakthrough. But it leads into another interesting question. You were talking about a lot of talent that England have got. One of those players is Harry Kane. And obviously, he's not getting younger. He's England's all-time top goal scorer. He's been leading the line for England for quite some time now. When Kane finally decides to hang up his boots, who do you replace him with?
I think that there's many different things to consider here. There's a lot of different variables because if you're saying he's going to hang up his boots and Southgate is still in charge of England, then that's a lot harder to answer than if you say he hangs up but Eddie Howe's in charge of England. Because what it feels like and appears to me is that Southgate likes that number 9 who drops a little bit deep but then gets in the box, wins headers, all that kind of good stuff, flicks on. And I don't think we have a direct replacement for that. I think you're probably looking at maybe Tammy Abraham or Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but I don't think any of them really step up to the level that Kane's at. But if a different manager comes in, a younger manager or a more exciting manager, whatever, they might feel like Rashford's the number 9. Or, the number 10 does that job, or Ivan Toney does the job, or Ollie Watkins from Villa can run all day, or Patrick Bamford, I don't know.
But I suppose what you're looking for, or the question that you're asking is, who's the long-term successor? Obviously, you've named a lot of, or you've named a couple there of England players who could come in as striker, but who do you see as replacing Kane? Like, not. I understand what you're saying about the flick-ons and stuff, but just in terms of being an out-and-out goal scorer for England, like someone who's going to lead that line a number nine who can, assuming that we're still playing like a 4-2-3-1 style formation or a 4-3-3 where they're going to be the sole striker.
Yeah.
Who do you play? Who replaces Kane? Who's the most natural replacement that you can think of right now?
I think if you're just going to go for someone who's just their job is just put the ball in the net, that's it. Then I think
Kevin
there's two
Phillips.
that I would. Well, yeah, if you can bring him out of retirement, yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
I think there's two naturals. Then I think there's one that might be on the edge, but I actually think will be a decent striker for England. So the two naturals would be Dominic Calvert-Lewin and right now maybe Callum Wilson. I think he can run the line. I think he closes down well, but goal scoring wise, I think probably lets him a little bit down. You can probably say Abraham, but his goal scoring is quite poor, really,
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things. And then I think the more sort of one that I think we should consider is Eddie Nketiah from Arsenal.
Okay. Yeah. No.
Scores goals. He's exciting. He chases. He's loads of stamina. He chases loose balls, dead balls, close down the kick. Like it's just for me, he's just got everything that would make his position in the England team a very exciting one. Imagine the front four. If you got Saka, Rashford, and Nketiah and Bellingham behind.
Yeah. Or well, I mean, you could even go a bit different to that. So you could have like keeping Bellingham in the team, but more as a traditional box to box midfielder. You'd have Saka one side. Um,
Foden.
Would come into there. You'd have Nketiah up front. You could even play Sterling if you wanted to on the opposite flank. Like there's an outright attacking four players that you could have there, and then you could
Yeah.
have Bellingham as your box to box with someone like Declan Rice or Calvin Phillips as more of your defensive minded midfielder. I think that could work. I think that'd be quite exciting. Um, I can't see it happening with Southgate being in
No.
charge. But
No.
I'd like, I wouldn't mind a man just coming and go, you know what, we're going to play this. I think I agree with your choices. I think the obvious standout one would be, I think as an out and out replacement, I think the only one we've got close is Calvert Lewin. I don't. Callum Wilson, yeah, I agree. I think Calvert Lewin's ability in the air kind of like stands up with Kane's. Obviously, Kane
Yeah.
is the better player in my opinion, but he has that in his bag. Um, yeah, I think Callum Wilson would be
You've
the other
also got
choice.
like Ivan Toney as a here and now direct replacement potentially.
I do like Ivan Tony, but I don't know. Is in trouble a lot now, isn't he, with match fixing scandals or betting or something like that?
Yeah, but if he is, as long as he doesn't get an actual ban, which I don't know what's going on.
As long as he doesn't bet against England and then we lose.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that the more there's two ways to look at it. Is if Kane can't play in Euro 2024, you've probably got a few potential replacements. But when Kane can't play in World Cup 2026, then you're also then removing the likes of Callum Wilson, even Tony, Danny Ings, if you want to put him in that category.
Yeah,
DCL is obviously a bit older, but then you've got these younger players which you're going to have to invest in at some point.
I think if Kane can't play in 2024, I think you can't. You have to look at the form of Rashford this year.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
know it'll mean a change in the way that England play, but I think in order, with the way Rashford's been playing, it would be a worthwhile change to the England system. If for whatever reason Touchwood doesn't happen, but Kane can't play in the Euros, I think that Rashford's done enough this season to say he should be leading the line for us. Um, I think there's other players as well. Like there is one who plays in France at the moment, following Balogun, who I believe has scored something like 16 goals in France. He's like one off Mbappe. And I know Southgate is he's been reluctant at the moment to give him an England call up, saying that he doesn't want to just give people call ups for the sake of it or get him to pick a nationality. But again, one goal off Mbappe in the French league, not playing for PSG, is definitely something that you should be looking at.
That's it.
And outside of them, I think I'll probably go and get here as well.
mean, he's doing good things with Arsenal, and fair enough. You can probably argue that as soon as Gabriel Jesus is fully fit, that Nketiah returns to the bench. But
I suppose my argument, like, is Nketiah a striker, or is he doing a job for Arsenal? Which, don't get me wrong, he's doing a job well, but is it his natural position, or is he just filling in?
yeah, no, he's a striker.
And I think between him and Rashford, you've got two players who can score goals. I think them two. Not saying change to like a 4-4-2 or anything, but my choice would be between those two, and whoever doesn't start would be on the bench.
Mm.
Yeah. But yeah, I think you kind of look at it now and you kind of think, okay, England have been blessed with strikers over the years. When you look at the likes of Lineker, Shearer, Rooney, Owen, like we have been blessed with like a lot of good strikers. Kane now, I think, looking at what we currently have, it's difficult to say who's going to be Kane's natural replacement. And I think that in some ways it's bad because we've always relied on these kind of these powerful strikers to sort of lead the line for us. But it could be exciting that it ushers a new tactical change for the England man to say, okay, well, we can't play the old traditional English striker up front anymore. We now have to look for a new, more modern way of playing.
Yeah, I mean, Kane suits exactly how Southgate wants to play.
Yeah.
So if Southgate had Rooney in this setup, I don't think Rooney. I think he does a job, but I don't think Rooney does as good as what Rooney done in previous managers under Alex Ferguson and whoever the England managers were at the time. Sven, I don't know, Stan Allardyce, I think it was one game or something. I don't know.
Sven.
Yeah, but I just think Southgate's.
Capella? Did Rooney play under Fabio Capella?
Yeah, he did, didn't he?
But yeah, like well, I kind of, I suppose my question would be, does Kane fit what Southgate wants to play, or is Southgate playing this way for Kane? If that makes sense.
Well, that's what I mean. He's putting Kane in the squad, but I mean, what's Kane's role at Tottenham? Because he's not stuck on the 6-yard line with Tottenham.
No, but I think that the way that Tottenham play, like Kane does drop deep, he does win the ball, but then you've got two players like Kulusevski. I think Richarlison's done it a bit this season, but pre this season, Son has been that player where those two almost make the front two, which is something that I thought we'd see with England with maybe Kane and Rashford, where you've got those two players linking up to create goals for each other. Those pair, I think they are the most successful partnership in Premier League. Son and Kane, that is.
Kane, yeah.
But then when you look at the way that Kane is playing for England, sometimes he seems very isolated, and then when he's dropping deep to win the ball, which I think he done quite a lot against America, he doesn't have that player that's on the same wavelength as him. So it's almost like you're losing an attack because when Kane drops deep, he wants to have a Son who's going to be like making that run that he can then just pick out.
The thing is, if Kane's going to drop deep, then you're going to want Saka and whoever he decides to put at left, just say Foden, for example. You want one of them to come inwards and go narrow, and then that's where you need your wing backs to push on to create that wide. Because if he drops deep and all of a sudden Saka and Foden are wide on the touchline, all he can do is either pass the ball back or lump it to win, but then they've got nowhere to go anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's been a problem for England. I think we're quite one-dimensional at times, and if a team knows that they can just isolate Kane, and then it kind of ruins our attack. But then, you kind of screaming out, looking at the bench, saying, "Bring on Grealish, bring on Foden, like bring on something different." But then he doesn't. Like we end up getting, sort of. In games, teams know how to play against England.
I think when he plays a pressing way and he goes attacking, he goes looking for goals, I think he's got him set up quite well. I do. It's just when he wants to try and defend games, I just don't think he's quite good at that yet. I don't think he's good enough to do that.
Which I think it's quite telling when he plays two central midfielders who are quite defensive minded that England can't defend a lead.
Well, yes.
You've got your back four, you've got your two central midfielders. You're pulling six players there that can all sit back in front of the goalkeeper and try and stop from conceding. Yet, if we're defending a 1-0 lead, you pretty much know that the other team are going to score at some point.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? If Italy would have pulled it back to 2-2, you'd be very frustrated given the first half, but you also probably would have walked away and thought, typical.
Yeah. And so, with that in mind, we'll now take a look to the future. And my final question for this episode is Jude Bellingham the future of England?
Absolutely.
Oh, there you go. All right,
Absolutely.
then. Join us next week. No, yeah, I agree. I think when you look at the talent that England have got in terms of young talent coming through, Foden, Bellingham, like Nketiah, as you mentioned, Saka, like I think that England should be positive about the future.
Yeah.
And I think in the centre of midfield, I feel like at some point Bellingham is going to be recognised as being the best central midfielder in the world. I think his talent or his potential at the moment is ridiculous. Like there's a reason why Man City, Man United, Liverpool, Real Madrid, Chelsea. There's a reason why those teams all want to sign him. And what is he now? Like 19.
Yeah.
And at 19 years old to be talking to figures like 100 million plus. There's a reason why clubs are going to be willing to pay that. I know some clubs seem to throw around money like it's going out of fashion, but when you've got a team like take Liverpool for example, I use them a lot, being a fan obviously, but I feel like in a lot of times they make good examples. Liverpool have been very sort of restricted on the way that they spend money. They won't just go and throw money at someone for the sake of it, and if they do, the way they structure their payments and everything else, it always makes financial sense. But there's a lot of talk now about Liverpool willing to pay over 100 million to get him. There's a reason why Liverpool would want to do that, and that's because he is like the potential he's got is probably outweighs the potential of any other player that we've got for the England team at the moment.
I mean, we don't need to convince any England fan or football fan that Bellingham's world class at his age, but I do think we should actually take a step back, and because we're witnessing something now which we haven't ever witnessed before, and that's this player who probably the same sort of feelings as when Ronaldo was coming through the lines with Sporting and Messi was coming through the lines with Barcelona, and how the Spanish and Portuguese fans felt, or Argentinian fans, with Messi. But this is how we should be feeling now with Bellingham, because he's playing far older than what he should be.
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching him play for Birmingham City. I think it was against Blackburn Rovers or something, and he looked the most senior out of all the players on the pitch. And I think at this point in time, he was 16 years old, 17 years old, something like that. When you're talking about a 16, 17-year-old playing against seasoned professional players and looking the most professional out of all of them, then you're on to a good player. And I think that he's made good choices for his career. I think going to Dortmund,
I think that's the perfect choice.
Yeah, I think it's probably the best decision that he could have made at that point. And I think his next step now, obviously, will determine a lot of how his potential goes. So yeah, I think I think that we don't have. I think the only other person you could say talent-wise has got the potential to be deemed inside that world-class bracket. And when I say world-class, you're talking about players like the Luka Modric's in midfield, the Pirlo's in midfield, the Zidane's in midfield. Like, I would say that he has the potential to reach that level, Bellingham. And I think
I mean, apart from a few minor details, why isn't it that level already?
I just think it's age. I think, that when you talk about Zidane and what he'd done it consistently over a number of, many, many, many years. And I think Bellingham, he will get there and he will get that consistency. I think, when he leaves Dortmund and he joins a club and he starts winning trophies and championships and Champions Leagues and Premier Leagues and everything else, and he starts adding those titles underneath him, you'll see a lot more mature player. I think he's still a bit raw in the way that he plays sometimes. Um, but I think he has got the potential to be as good as those players for sure. And maybe not. We're not even talking like in the next sort of 7 years. We're talking he could be that good next year. If he joins.
I think he's at that level now. I mean, you can probably take away Zidane, maybe. I don't know, he was different breed and stuff. But I don't think there's a midfielder that's box to box in the world right now where you can say it's head and shoulders above Jude Bellingham.
Okay, well, if you had the choice, who would you take? Like Luka Modric in his prime or Jude Bellingham now?
Jude Bellingham now.
And I don't mean for like obviously looking at the future and everything else.
No, yeah, just literally just Modric in his prime or Jude Bellingham for one season right now. I'd take Jude Bellingham.
What about players like Kevin De Bruyne?
I mean, that one's tricky, right? But I think.
I mean, if you've hit a stumbling block with De Bruyne, and you can't really say that Jude Bellingham's in the same league as Zidane at the moment.
I think this yeah.
And
I mean, I think that De Bruyne's kind of. I mean, his passing is ridiculous, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
We all know that how good his foot is and stuff. But I just feel like if you think about tackling and harassing and stamina, all round box to box pressing, I do think Bellingham's better.
Well, I suppose
De Bruyne wins on his passing and his shooting.
I suppose though that like obviously midfielders, they're not just like your textbook. You can sign a midfielder to do a job. Each midfielder's got different roles. You're not going to sign Bellingham to play a position that you normally see with someone like David Silva, for example.
Yeah.
He's not that kind of neat, intricate kind of player. He's more just say he's going to press. He's going to win the ball back. He's good when he's being pressed as well, and he's good at picking the ball up in his own half and driving forward. So I suppose from those attributes alone, you would say, yeah, okay. I don't think there's many players in the world right now, if any, that's on par with him in terms of what he does. I just think that, maybe in sort of 2 or 3 years, we'll see a Bellingham,
of course, yeah.
a more mature Bellingham, where we'll look at it and go, okay, yeah, he was a bit raw before, a bit rough around the edges, but now we're seeing like this player that's hitting his prime like early, which, when you're talking about a player who's 21, 22 at that age, that's still like unbelievable.
I think the perception these days, so to be classed as world class, so you need to be a starter for a big team at like 19 these days. Like it's hard to become 25 and all of a sudden start becoming the best player.
I think that world class gets thrown around like too much as well. Like any player who is good at football gets classed as world class nowadays, and obviously there's a reason why, because clubs want to bump up the price.
Well, do you define what world class means?
But for me, I'd say world class is Messi, Ronaldo, like those types of players. Like, you're talking world class. You're talking the best players in the world. You're not talking about someone who's had a good season at Ajax.
Yeah, but when you say best player in the world, what do you mean on natural ability, or do you mean a player that can go to any club in any league in any country and be a good player in there?
Well, a world-class player would be able to go to any club at any league in any country and do it.
So Bellingham could do that?
Yeah, I'm not arguing with that, but what I'm saying is I don't think Bellingham's the finished article right now.
I wonder what people would think. It'd be good for people to comment on that one.
Yeah, I think also as well, like obviously we're from Birmingham. We've seen Bellingham from a kid. Being from Birmingham is kind of a, we all know about the infamous retiring of the number when he left.
Who's laughing now?
But like I think Birmingham City fans and people from Birmingham are very interested in like how sort of one of our own is progressing in the world. Like as naturally you would be with any player that you've had. Man U fans, when Ronaldo left for Madrid, they still followed his career to see how he would become and everything else. Like some players just have an impact on you. So it'd be good to hear from people who haven't got that kind of rose-tinted spectacles over a player to see what they think of Bellingham. Does everyone agree that he is world-class? Do you think that he is the future of England? And I suppose the follow-up question is, if you're the England manager now, do you look to build a team around Jude Bellingham? Yeah.
It's a good question.
Yeah. So those were my questions for this week. I think what we'll try and do, like the setup going forward. Obviously, we want to have these conversations, these debates, and we want to think of our own topics if we do. But we want to hear from obviously people listening. What kind of questions do you want us to debate? Do you have a question for us? We know we're not just looking at Premier League teams or international football. We're very much interested in Championship, League One, League Two, like going down the divisions as well. So any questions you've got, anything you want us to debate, drop a note in the comment. We'll read them all, and then we'll discuss it. And then we'll also look to bring on other guests as well to make the debate a bit more varied, a bit more fun, not so agreeing on every single point as well. So in future, we're going to have some guests come and join us to continue the conversations. But yeah, if you like this debate, drop a like, drop us a comment on what you'd like to hear us discuss. Let us know your thoughts on any of the topics that we've discussed. And yeah, and until then, we'll speak to you next week. Ben, it's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you very much.
Even though
It's been a pleasure being on.
Even though you're on every week.
Of
Yeah.
course.
Right then, we'll speak to everyone soon.